Hey, I wanted to make this quick video for you on what to do when your younger kiddos are melting down in anger and some tips on how to intervene before so we can prevent the meltdown, tips to how to step in when they're in the middle of it, and then the third part, how to address it when you're all the way to the end and the last thing that they're saying is how much they miss mom or they miss dad, and how to address that part. So, first of all, number one thing with our younger kiddos is we need to check, are they getting enough sleep and are they hungry? So, lots of meltdowns can be prevented if we are aware of their sleep schedule. Are they not sleeping well? Are they in bed, but they're laying in bed, not getting restful sleep? Are they restless? Are they getting up in the middle of the night and having to come in and check with you multiple times throughout the night because they're scared or they're upset? These are things that are affecting their sleep, and sleep is one of the number one contributors to behavior problems. And when we're talking about kids in grief, that behavior problem is going to show up when they are more tired, more cranky, and so they're going to be more irritable, more on edge. Again, the second part of that is food. Are they hungry? Are we having the meltdown because lunch should have been on the table 15, 20, 30 minutes ago? Or they said they weren't hungry when you had lunch, and now it's an hour later and they think they're starving to death. And so, again, we end up with this escalated anger outburst, really because they didn't pay attention to their body and eat when the food was ready for them. So, those are the number two things to check to try to prevent the anger outbursts. The next part is if we are in the middle of the cycle, so they're melted down, you know it's not because they need a nap, you know it's not because they're hungry. The escalation has started. They are yelling, screaming, hitting, kicking. Again, all of these displays of those anger outbursts. My recommendation is using the ACT limit setting. And for those of you who might not be familiar with ACT limit setting, it is a primary component of play therapy. And the reason why I use it, I used it with my own kids. I've been using it for over 20 years, not only in my own home, but also my private practice, is that it addresses the feelings, it addresses the behavior, and it helps teach our kids what do we do instead. And lots of times that's where we fall short is we just want to discipline or stop the behavior, but we forget to teach our kids, what can I do instead? What do I do with this energy? And so this helps put all of that together in a nice little package. So again, we're going to acknowledge the feeling, we're going to communicate the limit, and then we're going to target some new alternatives. So I'll give you just a quick example. And if you would like more help on how to do this type of limit setting, please let me know. This is something we could absolutely talk about in a clarification call or even in some one-on-one coaching. So with the limit setting, it may look like, I know you're really angry. So I'm acknowledging the feeling. I know you're angry. And I don't have to ask, are you angry? Because I see they're kicking, they're stomping, they're hitting, they're screaming. All signs, all indicators point to, I am angry. I am pissed off. So name it for them so that they understand what that feeling is, because they may not have a name for it, especially when we're talking about our littler ones. They may just know they feel yucky, but they don't know what that is. So name it. If it's anger, name it. If it's mad, if it's irritability, whatever it is, name it. Now you're going to have some kids who immediately are, no, I'm not. That's okay. This is not the time to put the mom or the dad foot down and say, I know better than you. It's not the time to engage in the power struggle. If they say it's not, you just say, oh, okay, I must have misunderstood. The second part is we're going to communicate that limit. So we're going to say, but I am not for kicking, or I am not for screaming at. So again, we're going to go back. We're going to say, I know you're really angry, but I'm not for kicking at, or I am not for screaming at. Very simple. I didn't add a lot of reasons. I didn't say in this house we don't do this and it's against this and this is why this rule. No. Short, sweet, matter of fact. That's what's going to have the larger impact. This is not the time for over explanation. The third part of that was that target the acceptable behavior. So I'm going to give them two things they can do instead. So I know you're really angry. I am not for kicking. You can choose to kick the pillow, or you can choose to go outside and kick the soccer ball. So I'm presenting two options that are similar to the action they're already wanting to do. They're wanting to kick. They have this energy. Allow them to get rid of it in a similar idea. So I'm not going to say, I'm not for kicking, but you can choose to color on this piece of paper. Those don't match up. So if I say I'm not for screaming at, then the alternative might be you can choose to stand on the backyard and scream, or you can choose to scream into your pillow. So I haven't stopped the behavior, but I've put it in parameters that are acceptable in my household, that fit my household rules, that fit my parenting. So the third part that I want to talk about is we've talked about what to do to try to prevent. We've talked about how to handle the behaviors when we're right in the middle of the escalation. But what happens with our grief kids when they get all the way to the end? They've gotten all this anger out. It may not have been the way we preferred, but they have just spiraled so much that now they're in a puddle on the floor talking about how they miss dad or they miss mom or why can't I see him anymore. That's the moment that it's not about disciplining the behavior. If we've made it all the way to this spiral, we're now getting a peek of what's under the anger. And what was under the anger is what was fueling the anger, what was fueling the behavior. And so most of the time, that is sadness, fear. Those are the big ones that sit underneath there. And sadness and fear are not things our kids are real good at explaining. They're not real good at putting their finger on. That's why it comes out in anger. They're mad they can't express that. They can't put the words together. They don't know how to explain it to you. So in that moment, if your child is in a puddle on the floor, just sobbing about how much they miss their parent or their loved one, get down on the floor with them. If your child is not a touchy-feely child, don't put your hands on them. Just sit next to them. All you're doing is saying, I'm right here, without having to say, I'm right here. Now, maybe your kiddo is one who likes that tactile touch, so maybe a squeeze, maybe a back rub, maybe scratching the back and just saying, I miss him too. Or it's really overwhelming when you miss dad. And sometimes that comes out in anger. That's all they need to hear in that moment, because our goal is to stay calm and present and to show them that we are anchored, we are safe, and we can handle their big emotions. We're not going to jump into the big emotions with them. We're not going to escalate because they've escalated. And so then the flip side of that is once they've calmed down, and I would suggest waiting like 10, 15 minutes. For some kids, they need longer time to calm down, so maybe it's 30 minutes or an hour. Then go back and talk about, remember when you were yelling and screaming, or remember when you were kicking at mom? That's not okay. So again, we're going to use that ACT limit setting. I know you were really mad then, but I'm not for kicking. Next time, you can choose to go outside and kick the soccer ball, or you can choose to kick your pillow. Again, we want to provide the education. You're adding in that extra component so that they know what to do next time. But we also know is that when we get activated in our sympathetic, when we are in that fight or flight response, the cognitive part goes off. So they can't remember their choices. So as a parent, that's where we step in and present those alternatives, those choices, to help them and help guide them to make the healthier choice. And the more we're consistent about that. So if kicking in the midst of a tantrum is a typical behavior for your kid, always have the two same options. Or if you notice one works and the other doesn't, then change one up. But try to be consistent. So this is not something where you get creative and every time this behavior shows up, you have to come up with 10 options. No, keep it to 2, only give them 2 options, and keep it to ones that you are willing to say yes to. You don't ever want to present an option that you're not willing to follow through. So let's say it's snowing and 30 below at your house. Probably kicking the soccer ball outside is not going to be an appropriate option. Maybe it is. Maybe it is at your house. Maybe you have all the snow gear and that is totally cool and that works for you. Fantastic. But if that doesn't work for you, maybe there is a couch cushion they can kick. Maybe that you have a punching bag or a bop bag in your playroom that you redirect them to kick. Maybe they have a giant stuffed animal that sits in the corner and they only sit and read with him. Well, maybe that's something that they can kick. Again, you're allowing the behavior, you're granting it in a way that's acceptable to you, and they're not hurting anybody, and they're not going to hurt themselves. So obviously, we wouldn't say you can choose to kick the chair. Well, then we run the risk that they're going to break a toe or hurt themselves, and we don't want that. So set it up for success. So I think the other part that I would want to emphasize is we know why our kids are angry. When it comes to grief, we know the why. The why is their loved one died and they are pissed because this is way out of their control. Everybody else has their parent. They don't understand why they don't. They don't understand the adult details and, for lack of better words, all the options and things that go into, okay, my spouse just died. Now I have to decide financially, can we stay in our home? Who's going to watch the kids? All of the logistics of parenting. Our kids don't get that. And it's not our job as parents to explain to them how burdened we are by the loss too. Our kids need us to meet them with, I get why you would be upset. They don't need to hear our 20 reasons why we're upset too. So I hope that this video kind of narrows down how to handle it before, during, and after. So the before, we're going to take a look at sleep and food. The during the tantrum, we're going to use the ACT limit setting. And afterwards, we are going to calm and connect with our child and then come back and use the ACT limit setting. So if you have any questions, feel free to comment and I will answer them.